and best direction to take, and help us arrive at those directions with interactions that are dignified, respectful, and well-informed. Thank you for the solemn honor of serving the public in our roles, and continue to bless those who are fortunate to live here and work here. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
So moved.
I've got a motion by Councillor King,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Woodson. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to public comment? Madam Clerk?
Nobody signed up?
No one? Okay, we will close public comment. Next is our public hearing. Hearing. This is continued from April 1st, 2024. It is Resolution 24-56 SEZ 202-30302 450 Harbor Court, Rude Shrimp. It is a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving with conditions, denying special exception SEZ 202-30302, requesting consumption on premises for a restaurant with a bar/cocktail lounge that is visible from the exterior of the restaurant per section 34-1264 B2A.3 for the property located at 450 Harbor Court, providing for clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, scrivener's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date. If any town council member has had any ex parte communication to disclose, please let us know the subject discussed and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, any correspondence that you received, or observations made of this site. Councilor King?
I've been there a few times, and I did receive, as I recall, correspondence about noise from several residents.
Vice Mayor Hatterhall?
I've had no additional context since my disclosures on Monday.
I have not either. Councilor Woodson?
I have had no additional contacts.
Councilor Safford?
No additional contact either.
Okay. Before we get started, Frankie wants to do a little public service announcement.
Yes, just so all council members are aware that this is just for the special exception. That's the only, what they're here for is the forward-facing bar. All other matters are being handled by staff.
Okay, thank you. Jason or Sarah? Sarah? Sarah Prost has been qualified as an expert already by this town council, and based on her education and experience has been accepted as an expert in the field of land use, planning, and development in the town of Fort Myers Beach. Are there any other individuals who would like to be qualified as an expert witness on behalf of the applicant at this time? Seeing none. As a property owner, applicant seen a copy of the agenda backup materials from staff.
Yes, I sent it, so yes,
Okay.
as far as I'm aware.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Lisa Lahner, applicant and Freeland Florida Holdings, LLC, property owner, are applying for special exception to allow for consumption on premises for a restaurant with a bar visible from the exterior of the restaurant. Section 34-1264 B2A3 allows a restaurant with 50% of sales from food to have a bar. However, the bar may not be visible from the exterior of the restaurant. The Rude Shrimp restaurant is constructed of a storage container and is completely outdoors, so the bar is visible from the exterior and has exterior seating. Therefore, the bar at Rude Shrimp requires a special exception approval in order to operate. The property is zoned commercial marina, which allows marina accessory uses. The code defines marina accessory uses as uses normally ancillary and subordinate to a marina, including but not limited to boat dealers, sale of marine fuel and lubricants, marine supplies, boat motors, boat parts, restaurant or refreshment facility, boat rental, minor boat rigging, boat repair and service, and motor repair. The original application for the Rude Shrimp Restaurant temporary permit was approved June 8th, 2023. In November, planning staff was made aware that there was an outdoor bar at this location. Staff has suggested conditions of approval if the town council chooses to recommend approval of this request. These are the same conditions that were applied to the Beached Whale, with the exception of several changes that were added, recommended by the LPA, and then some changes that occurred following the meeting on Tuesday. Staff has received several letters of objection and letters of support for this request. Staff is available for any questions you may have, and I believe the applicant is also here.
Okay, are there any questions from the applicant for staff? No? Okay. Council, John, any questions for Sarah?
I guess, yeah, because now with what Frankie had said, seemed to muddy the waters for me because we had the LPA recommendations and a lot of it was about sound and music. But we're just considering the bar. So I guess I'm confused as to where we are with these. And you just mentioned them again, the rules that were added by the LPA.
Staff was not made aware of any changes that we needed to make to the resolution with conditions. So these are the ones you have the opportunity to change if you do not feel that they're appropriate. However, I think staff is still in favor of all of them.
Well, I think what you were referring to was the floodplain issues,
Correct.
which are not part of.
Yeah, that is correct. They met all the other requirements.
All right, well, then
Yes.
that clears it up a little more for me. Thank you.
Sorry, sir.
So if
Sorry,
I
I
can
wasn't
add,
sure myself.
to hopefully clear the waters, so the outside bar is what precipitates the need for the special exception. When the special exception was reviewed by the local planning agency, they added, and staff also recommended some additional conditions. And so it's now delivered to you for approval, denial, or approval with conditions for your determination.
And Nancy, just to be even more clear, what we're voting on to approve or deny is specifically just the use of an outside bar, a bar outside the restaurant.
That is the requirement, but the recommendation is in order to do that, these conditions would apply.
Understood. Okay,
So it's discretionary on your part.
got it. Vice Mayor Adderholt, questions?
I have no questions.
Councilor Woodson?
I do have a question because I still cannot get it through my head of why when the ordinance refers to the outdoor bar, but we have all these restrictions of music and sound and all of that. Shouldn't that be covered by just our normal sound ordinance and not be parts of condition in this? Because we're just looking at the bar, correct?
Well, we applied the same conditions that you had for the whale. So, I mean, it's a very similar use. They're proposing they currently operate a bar that's outdoor with music. Noise was one of the concerns with this, as you received letters of complaint about noise. And we applied the same requirements that the whale had, which you deemed appropriate. So if you don't think that they're appropriate in this instance, you could certainly remove them. However, we thought that this was applicable. It was sort of an apples to apples comparison. So that's why we used those.
Councilor Woodson, procedurally, maybe this is a question we can ask the applicant if they're okay with the conditions and then go from there. But
Yep.
your point is well taken.
Yep.
I was going to ask the applicant that question as well.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Good morning. My name is Lisa Lehners, and I'm the applicant and owner representing the Rude Shrimp Company. I'm here today to request a special exception for consumption on premise for a restaurant with a bar and cocktail lounge that is visible from the exterior of the restaurant. Thank you for your consideration of this request, your time, and your service to this community.
Councilor Safford? We'll start with Councilor Woodson. Go ahead.
So, I mean, my question is, okay, I'll just say a couple of opinions here. I think this whole ordinance is archaic and we should be looking into that. That's beyond the point. But I know there's been some issues. I know that you have done a lot to move speakers and that type of thing. Are you okay with having these conditions as part of the bar ordinance?
Yeah, in relation to the music, I'm okay with what we discussed previously. We are in the process of installing hardwired speakers that will be basically where the temporary speakers are at right now that the musicians are using. So the speakers will go in the corners of the shipping container, pointing out towards the Mantanza Bridge and water away from the residential neighborhood. And then this will allow the musicians to actually go back on the small stage to play from the stage with a monitor, and the speakers will be where they're currently at now. It just eliminates the clustering of people and musicians all in that corner of the bar. So the speakers will still project the sound from where they're currently projecting the sound.
Personally, it makes me sad because I can no longer open my door to listen to the music. So I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum.
You could skateboard down the street.
I could, but I would be interested. I'd walk.
Counselor Safford?
That was the question I had, if you're okay with these conditions. I'd like to, going forward, I understand why these are in here, but, we've got one issue and it just gets,
Just blossoms.
yeah, it just blossoms. So, but I do understand that, neighborhood impact, and if you're okay with these,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. And, my musicians, as I stated previously, are pretty consistent. And actually, one of the musicians that plays there a lot is the ones wiring the speakers, and they're all invested. They want to stay there as long as they can as well.
Very good. Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Counselor King?
No questions at this time.
I do not have any either. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this matter? If so, please come forward to the podium and identify yourself, provide your address, and whether you were sworn in. Seeing none, are there any additional comments, rebuttal, or closing statements from the applicant? Says no. I will now close the public hearing and request a discussion or a motion from town council to approve with conditions, or deny with reasons, or a continuance to a time certain.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I have a concern about the 6 months coming for review. I'm okay with that because they're okay with it. And just like the whale when we discussed earlier, these are conditions we're imposing, so I would hope that we would take into consideration the cost to the applicant of each time this is done, that we would waive those fees.
Are there fees associated with the review every 6 months, or is it
I thought that's what-
administrative?
I think there are.
The way we set it up, it says that it shall be reviewed. So they're not applying for, they don't have to apply for another special exception. With the whale, when that condition was originally written, the way it was written, they had to get another special exception. With the way, realizing that that was not the way we wanted to do it and recognizing the issue that happened that time, we changed this language so that it's just a review. They have to come to us, we have to go to you, but it's not a new special exception.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay,
That takes care of my concern.
all right. Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 24-56 SEZ 202-30302, 450 Harbor Court, with conditions.
Second.
Got a motion by Counselor Woodson, seconded by Vice Mayor Adderholt. Any further discussion? A roll call vote. Counselor Woodson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Counselor Safford?
aye.
Mayor Allers is an aye. Motion carries unanimously. Next is the administrative agenda. Fees, a discussion on development agreement or site plan with deviations fees.
Did he get his napkin?
For those that
and now
didn't
he's
get to
gonna
hear
play,
it,
or-
that was
back there.
Howie saying he had to start his participation in his 2 hours of gamemanship. Oh, they're on the second part now? Is that the napping or the other part? The other part. Got it.
Gotcha.
Okay. Go ahead, Andy.
I think, Mayor, we've had discussions about this. I've had discussions about this internally with staff, and we just want to make sure that we've got everything set as we move into, new developments coming. We've got staff here that we can address and talk about it, and just kind of get your ideas and direction on how you would like to proceed or make any changes.
To add to that, I think I was the one that maybe brought this
Yes.
up at the other meeting. You now have a new tool in your toolbox, which is the development agreement, and your code does say that you would have assigned a fee for it. And, it was a short period of time between our last meeting and today's meeting, but staff did begin some discussion about how much should we charge, what should we, how should it be structured, there was a request made that staff look to neighboring communities as well to see how much they were charging, and that review with neighborhooding communities, that we just didn't have time to do that. But what was put in your agenda packet was the existing fees that are charged for other types of projects, or applications would be a better word, to get some feedback from you. And then this item would have to be brought back sooner rather than later, so we could actually begin using these development agreements. One thought was to have a combination, perhaps, in the event that the development agreement was asking for more than one variance. How much would you charge for that? Would it be a compilation of a multiplier of what one variance would cost? Or would you just give one variance fee for all three variances? So staff, I think, was going to explain maybe how it's currently done for the different types of reviews, the different types of deviations that would be required in a development agreement, just to kind of give you an overview and get some direction so we can bring this back quickly.
Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Right now, so I was under the impression that staff was charging, because this was a conversation that we had had previously, that when there was like more than one variance being requested, that it was going to be just one fee. The way it's currently being implemented, if it's asking for the same type of variance, so if you're asking for multiple setback variances, that's one fee. But then if you're asking for different types of variances, say you're asking for a setback variance and a parking number variance, you're asking for two setback variances and a parking variance, you'll get charged one for the setbacks and then one for the parking. Which I'd love to get direction on that so that we can clarify if that was the intent of the town council previously, or if you wanted it to be all of the variances that were being requested boiled down to one fee. And also the same for like special exceptions. Right now, the way it's done is if you're asking for a special exception and a variance, you get charged for the special exception and the variance. The way we were looking at doing the development agreement was you would have a fee for your development agreement, and then the components that go into that, whatever that might be. If you're asking for a development agreement and you're going to need to do special exceptions and variances, then you would be paying for multiple things. But if we compare this development agreement to a CPD, that's only one thing, and you get special exceptions, you get uses, you get deviations, and there aren't additional charges for that. So I'm not sure if that is the approach that we want. Do we want a flat rate? Do we want a rate developed on square footage of the use? Or do we want what they would have to ask for if they weren't doing this development agreement process? The way it's done I looked at Hillsborough because I thought they did a really good job of putting it together. They had a lot of applications, they had a lot of information on their website, so I could really understand what they were doing, and it seems to be very similar to what we're proposing here. So they charge $2,500 for anything, I think up to 5 acres. No, I think it's 1 acre, and then from 1 to 5, it's some amount, but $2,500 is what we would mostly be charging because we don't have very many parcels that are much over 1 acre. So $2,500 for the basic development agreement fee, and then charging for the individual components that would have to go into that. I don't know if that's how we want it structured, if that's how we want to view it, or if we want to view it like a CPD where it's a flat rate and you get all the things rolled into it.
Well, I'm curious because it was, as you were talking, it made me think about the argument was to have a development agreement so you didn't have to spend all the money to go through the CPD process to be able to get a denial or approval. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? I mean, we don't want to cut our legs, at least I don't want to cut our legs out from underneath our staff to be able to do their job. So say it goes through whatever the fees are for the development agreement process. Mm-hmm. what then happens if it gets approved? You still have to do all the work that you would have to do through a CPD process after the approval. So how do we combine those two, or how do we make those two, and can you make those two? Am I making sense? So if you charge, say, a flat fee of $1 for the development agreement, and it goes through the process, and then we'll just, for argument's sake, it's $1 for each, whether it's a variance, it's $1, special exceptions, $1, right? So now you've spent $5 to get your development agreement process moving. It gets approved. Does that amount then cover the amount of work you now really have to do the CPD part of the process? You know what I mean?
And so I think that this is a better question potentially for the attorney, because I don't have a good understanding of I understand what the development agreement says, but I don't fully understand the processing. I don't understand how it's going from here's my idea to it's done. So what happens in between there, who's involved, how much work that is, that's a big black box to me, and I'm not sure.
So it depends. The flat fee or the initial fee for the development agreement is intended to defray the costs to staff to process that application for a development agreement. So if you recall in the process, there is a negotiation component which, depending on the size or the complexity of the project, could be very short or very long as far as staff time. So that's basically your starting point for the flat rate. As far as the CPD, your code allows for your development agreement to be the functional equivalent of a rezoning. So there wouldn't have to be a CPD process afterwards. That would be rolled into the agreement itself. And as far as the criteria, it's pretty much going to be the same criteria that you would be looking for in a rezoning as well. But you have the benefit is that you have one document that says it all and does it all and moves as a whole.
And I think what I'm trying to get at, and maybe I didn't say it correctly, is the CPD process itself costs X, right, to go through that because of the review time. And the arguments that I've heard for the development agreement up to this point have been people don't want to spend the money on a CPD process only to be told no. It wasn't that the cost, it was I don't want to spend the money to be told no, and now I'm out all this money. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, are we cutting the legs out from our staff and the time and the money that they spend to review a process if we change the fees? Does that make sense?
Yes, but when you say spend the money, in my mind, it's not necessarily the concern with the amount of the application. It's more the concern of I have to go get a traffic study, I have to hire a planning consultant, they have to do, if it's a site plan issue, they have to do multiple revisions. I think that's where the majority of the money is spent. And that would be determined in the negotiation process. And they would know up front what staff's expectation or recommendation would be, that yes, you do need to do a traffic study, and they may at that point determine that they maybe don't want to go this route.
I'm just trying to figure out how we get to a price point. I'm open to anybody chiming in and giving their 2 cents.
So this one is somewhat experimental for the town because we've never really done these before. They've never been implemented. My recommendation is that you come up with a number and give direction to staff. And if it proves to still be cost prohibitive or doesn't achieve the policy that you're concerned with of trying to help stimulate redevelopment, then we'll bring it back and you can make an adjustment to it.
I think what you're going to find is most people, I shouldn't say most, but I would imagine that they're going to ask for, relief from parking. They're going to ask for a little bit more height. They're going to ask for a little bit more density, especially on the smaller boutique hotels. I think those are almost givens. My assumption might be wrong, but I would think that you're going to look at density, height, and parking. Those are the big three.
Yeah, I would think just for a starter. I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise there'd be no point of having or need
Right.
for
So I think if you have a flat fee
Yeah,
to start with,
to
then
start with, and just to continue on with Scott's example, is that, okay, so now there's a parking concern. They would not necessarily have to do that parking study at the negotiation component. They can move forward and try to get the development agreement approved without having to do a parking study. And that's where the
Traffic
cost,
study.
a traffic study. That's where the cost savings is, as opposed to doing it and then finding out later that maybe they didn't really need to do it. It wasn't necessary.
Yeah,
And
and
that's that negotiation process.
And that's what I understand. I get that part of it. What I guess I'm trying to get at is, if it's a flat fee of $1 to go through this development agreement, that's not the end. If through staff and through negotiations with whoever's developing, there is additional things that need to be done, that is an additional cost that would be bared
That
by
they would
the.
have to
That, I
absorb.
just wanted to make sure that
Right.
whatever these fees are, it doesn't end just because the development agreement is approved or denied. Well, we'd have to say approved. Now the development agreement is approved, but within those conditions that were set through LPA process and the council process, you may have to do this, this, or this, that are
That's
going to
correct.
cost more to have the review done.
But they know that they're going to have to do it, as opposed to
Just doing
perhaps-
it. Sure.
yeah,
No, that makes
perhaps
sense.
having it not be necessary because the property right next door had a traffic study done 3 months ago. So why do we need to do a traffic study?
Just use
Well,
the same.
right now it's because the code requires it.
Sure.
But that might be a point of negotiation where you could waive that requirement and accept the results of a prior traffic study. That's still recent.
Sure. I mean,
So at this point, though, all we're asking for is direction on how to get them out of the barn
sure.
on this agreement.
And I guess I'll go back to staff again. They're the experts here. They know how long it takes to review this stuff. We do not. So I know there was talk at the last meeting about, you could use square footage, or you could use, acreage, or you could use whatever. The square footage, the more I thought about it, kind of scares me, because through the development agreement, if I come in and say I'm building 10,000 square feet, but it ends up not being 10,000 square feet, is that I mean, I don't know how that could be a possibility. If they're approved to build a 10,000 square foot, whatever it is, it can't be more than 10,000 square feet, I would assume. Is that a fair statement?
So I do agree with you. They may come in with a concept and then through negotiations with management do not get to where they had intended. Then when it comes to you, it's less than what they had originally intended. I can see a chance of that happening. I mean, a pretty good chance of that happening. Somebody's always going to shoot, when you're negotiating, you go as high as you can, and then you come back down if you have to. So I think that is a likely risk. The other part of it is I'm not clear on the role of staff in a lot of this. And this may be more, staff may say, yeah, what they're asking for does require this, 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 and this. But it sounds like a lot of it is going to be hashed out, not at the staff level, because we enforce the rules. We don't, like I said last time, we don't horse trade. That's not our role. You don't want it to be our role. So we tell them, here are the parameters that the code has. Here are the things you cannot go beyond. Here's the wiggle room. And then they can work out the details. So I'm not really clear on how much staff time that requires, and I'm not really clear on how much, like staff report, that sort of thing is going to be going on, because I think that a lot of it is going to be the people who are at the negotiating table talking about why, not so much staff saying, we can say it doesn't meet this and this and this and this, and these are things they can ask for. But I don't.
Well, and I guess that's what scares me about this whole thing, and it scared me from the beginning. To Councilor Safford's point, they're going to be asking for things that you are, through the normal process, going to have to say no, because you don't get to do that negotiating. Your job is this is what the code says, so no is always going to be the answer. I would say 99.9% of the time, otherwise why do you need a CPD process or development agreement? Mm-hmm. So your concern is concerning to me. If our experts don't have any clue what they're supposed to be doing, how
Well,
are
I
you
think
supposed to
it's
associate
still
a
at
fee with
the
it?
infant stage, but she has basically, I think, clearly identified what planning's role is. But the whole point of having the development agreement is to provide for those deviations. And so once that's identified by staff, then it does go to talk about, well, what are those deviations and the extent and what might be palatable based on the benefit that's given to the community overall. Height and density are the two biggies, right?
But who's making, I think to Sarah's point, and I don't want to speak for you, but who's making that decision? Because she has said staff doesn't have that ability to make that decision.
Right. So it's negotiated and then it's brought to the
But with who?
LPA
If they-
with the town manager.
The town manager, okay. That's what I was trying to get at.
And staff works with the town manager, and it's probably part of that negotiation as far as a support function to advise the town manager as to what the code requires currently, and to discuss that the overall benefit of this project is to the benefit of the town to approve it. It doesn't quite fit with our code. So these are the deviations, then it would go to the LPA, and then it would come to you for the final approval or disapproval. But the benefit to doing that is that if there was, and I use the example of the traffic study, that might not be a requirement, whereas typically it would be. And she would be in a position of saying, we have to recommend a denial because there's been no traffic study done for this specific parcel.
My gut just tells me that there's something missing here, that there's a piece of it that, to me, from the surface, it just seems like staff is really being left out of the discussion.
Well, they should not be.
Well, but
not at all.
what I mean by that is you're providing, here's what the code says. And now the town manager is making the decision whether or not it moves forward from that to the LPA process, then to the council. What role do they play then once the manager decides that it is worthy enough to go to the LPA process? If they've already said it doesn't meet the code, do they just come up and just reiterate the code, and this is why it doesn't meet the code, and then, like we're doing now, just the same process?
Yeah, but don't they do that during the CPD process?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not only an advisory role to the town manager, it's also an implementation of interpretation of code and how it would fit. Every project that we're going to get coming forward and every project period is unique in and of itself. So every one of them that comes forward has a different parameter to follow. And I think that's where, like, Sarah's expertise and our staff add a very viable part, a very viable tool to educate Andy moving forward as far as how we can make that decision as a town, and then he can make that recommendation going forward from there. But I think it kind of goes hand in hand. It's the educational component to it. Not all of us can be held to know everything about how it goes, but how it fits together as a piece going forward. I think that's where staff is really going to come into play there.
And I understand that, and I think it's circling back to what we're trying to figure out here is the cost. So through the CPD process, it takes staff so long to review all the documentation, your architectures, all that stuff is done, and they review it. Through the development agreement promise, they don't have to have all of that at that time. They don't have to have all the big, thick plans for whatever story building they're going to build. They just have to have conceptually, here's what we're going to build. We want approval for this, whether it's density, intensity, height, whatever.
But it depends on the size of the project. I think what Sarah was talking about, the square footage,
Right.
The extent of their review. Remember, we talked about that a development agreement could be used for a residential property that requires 5 variances that are all somewhat interrelated. Under the code, an enforcement or an application of the code would deny it, but through the development agreement process, you could recommend approval because of the fact that it provides a structure, a development that is agreeable to the town. It is discretionary on your part.
Sure, no, and
once
I
it comes
get that.
out of LPA and
I'm just trying to get back to the amount of time it takes. If they're doing the same
yes.
review process as a CPD, what does that? Why should that cost then be any different? I understand the cost if they don't have to do traffic studies and they don't have all the other studies that the applicant would have to pay for. That saves them money.
Yes.
But as far as the staff review time, if they're doing the same review that they would do for a CPD for a development agreement, If
Why
it's the
is it
same,
different?
why is it good? Why should there be a different fee?
I don't think they should, but that's a policy direction that we need to get from council.
Because I'm all about saving people
Yeah.
money if they don't need to do a traffic study, or they don't need to do A, B, and
Right,
C.
right.
But if the review time is the same, whether it's a development agreement or it's a CPD process, why should the price be cheaper for a development agreement? Because
I
they're doing the same amount of work.
I agree with you, Mayor. So I guess perhaps maybe the direction to staff would be in bringing this fee
What is the
forward
cost
to you, if the development agreement requires a rezoning, then to go ahead and have it comparable, the fee comparable to a CPD.
Well, and
As a starting
I think
point.
that we've discussed this in the past. I'm a proponent of the CPD review process shouldn't be the same cost for someone that has a half acre
Yeah.
versus someone that has 12 acres.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different review I mean, it's much less that you have to review, but currently we only have a flat fee for a CPD process. So by changing that, I think through the development agreement we're talking about now, does that then be able to correlate over to the CPD process, which then makes sense to me, but not having two separate things.
Well, here's a question. Sarah, do you know what Hillsborough charges for a CPD?
For their base one, it's 2,500. So our fee schedule actually does include development agreement, although we've never done it, so it's interesting that we have a fee. It is,
What is that amount?
it's 5,000, and then to amend it is 2,500.
Oh, I see it there. It's on page 41.
And for Hillsborough, the key there is that you pay the 2,500, but then any additional processes that you would need within that. So you have to do a special exception, you have to do variances, you have to do these other things. You also are paying those fees on top of it. So it's a cumulative fee.
Did they make a distinction between residential or commercial development agreements?
Not that I could find in that code.
Isn't the development order is 3,000, right? Not 5?
Development agreement amendment is 2,500, and the development agreement, original agreement is 5,000. It's on packet page 41, like 4 lines from the bottom. Sarah, do you know what's the cost for a CPD currently? Trying to find, yeah.
So it lists a conventional rezoning as 5,800, but a CPD would not be a conventional rezoning. So hold on a second. Let me see if we can figure it out.
The development order, here's 3,000.
I know, that's what I was saying. Development order is 3,000. And then amendment is another 775.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. So the way it's currently now, the development agreement would be 5,000, then to have the development order would be another 3,000 on top of that.
That's a little much, thinking. Dan, where do you see the 5,000?
I don't see the
It's on
5,000.
packet page 41. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 line items up from code enforcement. So it says code enforcement, go 4 lines up. It's in the
Oh,
gray.
development agreement, original agreement,
Yep. And then 2
5,000.
below it,
Oh,
if
okay.
there's an amendment to it, it's 2,500.
Yeah.
We're gonna check with Kendra on the CPD because we're not seeing that. We're only seeing conventional rezoning in the
Yeah, I couldn't find it here. I thought maybe I was missing
yeah.
something.
No, it's not easy to read.
So while you're looking that up, maybe we have a discussion about the idea of, instead of one flat fee for every set property, to me, like I said, I think it makes sense to have a sliding scale like we've talked about with fences and variances and other things, you know. Again, if I got a 1/4 acre lot or I've got a 1/2 acre lot, or, you know, it should be, because you're going to have more review time for 12 acres versus a 1 acre. So what those dollar amounts should be, I think, is the discussion to have. What makes, is keeping it at 5,000 for whatever size property and then working backwards. Does that make sense to you? Because again, you are the ones that are reviewing it. You're the one that knows what your costs are, that the town pays you to review something of a specific size. Does it make sense to use that 5,000 as the top and then work backwards based on the size of the lot?
So another option would be, and Nancy and I discussed this, would be where there's a base fee, but then the applicant also puts money into an account, and then all of the reviewers, the sub-consultants, and we do it on basically an hourly basis, however much time is required to do the reviews. So if we need a traffic engineer, the traffic engineer gets brought in, and they basically pull money out of that account to go towards the required reviews. So if my staff does reviews, it's an hourly basis. If we needed somebody else, it would be an hourly basis. So we would be putting money into an account and then pulling out as needed to ensure that we had enough money to cover all the reviews. So larger projects are going to cost more money, and if they run out of money, they have to put more money into the account. That way, the town always knows it covers its own costs. Figuring out how much goes into that account may be tricky.
So that is a model that the town of Oakland has used. They're a very small town. They have one planner on staff, and they pretty much have to rely on third-party consultants. So when a developer applies for a project, they will give the town money so that the town can then contract out with the third party. The third party does it. Whatever money is left that hasn't been spent gets returned.
But we
it would
have all
have
that
to be a
in-house now, pretty much,
voluntary.
right? I mean,
It can be, no? Go
Well,
ahead.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
so here's the key. It is in-house, but when it's in-house, the town pays for it. There's no way to assure that the prices are covered. So the difference would be, so for example, when we have to use Tetra Tech, they do bill through. When we have to use, for one of our projects that you're going to be seeing coming up, they wanted a different traffic engineer, and we have to bill through. So, and we have in our code that we can do that. However, it requires staff time in order to do all the billing, and then there's a pass-through cost. So there's an administrative cost to doing the paperwork and billing through, as opposed to if there was an account, and then everybody just basically bills to the account and pulls the money out. So there wouldn't be a pass-through fee. So there's currently, I believe, a 3% pass-through fee. So there wouldn't be that. And we would always know that the town was able to cover its costs. The town would never be out of pocket on anything. And staff could use that too, so that we could ensure that, you know, if the attorney has to bill hourly, I have to bill hourly, staff goes ahead and bills hourly. We know how many hours went into that project. We know what the cost was to the town. So the town is never out of pocket for these types of projects.
So I guess that goes kind of back to what I was trying to say earlier. Does it make sense to have a flat fee up front? Because you're not going to do that deep dive into those things until it goes through, until the LPA and the council process says you need to have this, this, and this, and this to be able to get your acceptance. Now that could trigger this cost, this cost, this cost, this cost. That comes after the initial review. So just trying to focus in now on is there a process to be able to have an initial review that you're going to look at? Because I want 50 stories, but I know the code says you can only have 2. This is going to trigger this, this, and this if it gets approved.
So to go back, we do have the CPD cost. It's $8,000 and $1,000 per additional acre. So if it's more than an acre, it's $1,000 per additional acre. So if you have a 2-acre project, it's $9,000.
So it's already,
per
so,
acre.
so development agreement is already significantly cheaper than,
As it's currently written, yes. So one thing to think about with what you were talking about, there is an option for this initial development agreement. When I was reading through the Hillsborough code, the way they do it is you can apply for an initial review, whether that density seems appropriate, whether, you know, so that you go through this first blush where the town says, yeah, that seems okay. And then and maybe that's when you come up with the total cost, or maybe that's when you say, okay, you need to put 10 grand into an account for this project, and then staff bill from it. And then say, okay, it looks like it's going to need, and this could be part of the initial staff report where staff looks at it and we present it to you and say, when we look at this, they're not meeting this, 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 they're asking for deviations here, here, and here. Then you would evaluate it, determine if it's appropriate and what processes they actually need to go through. what staff needs to review for, what, if they need a traffic impact analysis, if they need these things that, the code normally requires. And then rather than it being negotiations up front with Andy and Frankie, it would be sort of, what do you guys think? And then you could give that initial yay or nay, move forward, or, I don't know about that. Or go through these processes and you can probably get there. It's an option. It's very loose compared to what we currently do.
Okay, so we're looking for guidance today. So you can see within the 2-day period that we had a lot of discussion, and Sarah did get some research done, and the answer is not crystal clear. So we don't have a recommendation today, but we do want to have feedback so we can come back at a next meeting or the meeting shortly thereafter with a definitive. So if there are projects waiting to use this tool, we can move them through the process. That's all.
What about, here's a suggestion, what about half the price of a CPD? If CPD's 8 and 1,000, do the developmental agreement at 4,500.
I mean, numerically, that makes sense. I'm just trying to wonder if because I guess I didn't even know this, and staff didn't necessarily know, is that we already have a fee schedule for a development agreement. So there's already something in place that people that are choosing to move forward. I just don't want to make a decision too quickly that we have to go change again. And we did only give them 2 minutes or two days to review this. Personally, I would feel more comfortable because we already have a fee schedule in place. Doesn't mean we can't adjust it lower or do whatever we want to do with it later. But I don't know that someone's coming in tomorrow to put in for, maybe they are, I don't know. But, I would feel more comfortable giving you the time that you need to give us a thorough recommendation of here's based on what we know in the town, what we know is coming, what we know it's going to take to do it. This is what our recommendations are for the fee schedule. Personally, I would feel more comfortable doing it that way because we do have this already set in place. Vice Mayor Earl? You're thinking hard.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, I'm always a big fan of not reinventing the wheel, and we've heard repeatedly that both Lee County and Collier County have these development agreements. Can we not just see what they charge, just to get a sense of proportion?
Yes, I think with additional time, we could come up with that information. It's just we had that 2-day period. We
Yeah.
wanted to take the opportunity. The other thing I want to add is that staff is working on the application itself. And the message really is that you adopted your procedural rules, you have your ordinance in place, we're working on the application, we're working on the fees. So we are moving forward with your direction.
I just think since it's brand new for our community, even though it's in our ordinance, I think just having some symmetry with our neighbors would be helpful. And so knowing what Lee County and Collier County charge would be really helpful in terms of trying to be in sync with our neighboring communities.
Okay.
Is everybody comfortable with that direction moving forward? Give them a little bit more time to use the fees that are in place should something come forward?
If somebody comes by, tomorrow or next week, there's already a fee there.
It's
so.
already set. That can work off that.
I actually like that draw system. Would that be hard for the finance department to?
I've worked with those everywhere I've been.
Really?
And when the money runs out, you stop work and say we're not moving forward until you deposit more money. And if at the end of the day there's money left over, you give it back.
I love that because if it's a small project, boom boom. But if it gets complicated, then we need to the town needs to cover expenses.
And that's the way it's always been in my experience as well. Set up like a savings account.
So what would that take to get that implemented immediately? What?
Well, some people may make the argument that imposing or requiring a deposit is more burdensome and it's more restrictive. So we do have that SB 250 that's hanging out there. However, it could be a voluntary.
That's a good point.
The developer might, voluntarily agree, yes, I will give you $20,000, please expedite my project. That's how it's really worked in other communities, that the developers are working with the town to do the right thing, go through the review process, and not fight the local government so much.
Right. I don't think a little guy can, cough up 20,000 that easy.
Well, that's what, when you said that, I kind of cringed. I was like,
No,
But
I'm not-
if it's a
we're not-
multi-million-dollar project,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's
But
very
The little
little.
guy is not going to have to cough up 20,000.
Right,
no,
right.
but what scared me about what you said is the word expedite. Here's $20,000. I want you to expedite my project.
Well, because
That's what
of-
scared me.
Mayor, if I can clarify, it's just because, there's the perception that things take a long time because they're being handled internally.
Sure.
The idea is to have a third-party consultant that might be able to process it faster than the backload.
Can we touch on that, Nancy, for a second? Because we do have quite a few projects coming out. Just for everybody's education, it seems like Margaritaville hired an outside entity to help process their application. Is that a model that we still use, and is it available to developers today?
I would assume that it is. Staff still has to do their side of the work. What I was going to say about like an outside entity is a lot of the outside entities we are working with right now are backlogged. So everybody is very busy. So even though we would like to be able to say we can hire outside consultants, but I'm sure that if a large developer wanted to hire an organization to assist them, the problem is staff still has to do their part of the job, because when someone is being paid by the client, there is a tendency to vote in favor of the client. So just being aware that staff would still have to do our side in order to ensure protection of the town.
Okay.
Yes, but in that situation, the consultant is actually hired by the town or the local government. It's just the
I think
property owner.
Yeah, I
that
think
would make the
Margaritaville
payment.
hired Spakowski, who had a local ties to help them
But that
process.
was contract with Margaritaville.
Right, Margaritaville paid those costs, but I think the town contracted with the vendor to help expedite the process. I think.
I don't know.
No? Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Scott, you were on the LP. Remember that? Maybe you weren't. Seemed like they hired an outside firm I thought they hired Bill Spakowski to help process their form at the Margaritaville's expense. I thought
Yeah,
the town
they did.
contracted with them. Yeah. Just to help. Just thinking out loud. Yeah.
Gooch was involved too, wasn't he?
I think he was working directly for Margaritaville, I think. But that's been some time.
Interesting.
so I think what you're saying, Nancy, is I think we've all agreed that there's fees in place to be able to move forward, to give you a little bit more
Should
time.
something come forward, yes.
And look at that model of the pay, the account or however it's worded, that it evidently, because Andy's going to be the ultimate development agreement, move forward to the LPA or not, and he's familiar with that model, it makes sense to me to work off of that model that he's used to. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So as far as the fees, then, if you had, another week and a half with comparing those fees, is this something that could be moved to the April 15th town council agenda?
I
Or,
would defer to Sarah. I think what I've heard, though, was that council wanted a pretty thorough review as to, is the $5,000 appropriate? What is our neighboring communities doing? To give a little bit more detail. I don't know if it's feasible to do that in a week and a half.
Well, and I think is it fair in saying that we're not, whether it's in the next meeting or the meeting after that, we're not holding up a process of someone that wants to go through a development agreement
Because it's
currently,
already in your.
because it's already there. So we're
Yes.
not going to be restricting anybody to
Okay.
be able to move forward.
okay,
It's,
where I was going with it, so.
as long as we're not holding someone up on a decision that, because it's already in place, then, I think if it takes you a little longer, then it takes you a little longer. And if you want to move forward, move forward. Is everybody all right with that?
Yep.
Okay. We don't need to vote on that, do we? Or do we need to make a motion?
No, we've got direction. That's what we needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next is the FEMA National Flood Insurance, the NFIP, to authorize the town manager or his designee to investigate the impact of FEMA's recent determination communicated to Lee County regarding a change in the National Flood Insurance Program CRS rating, and to take any and all necessary steps to mitigate any potential financial impact on residents of the town of Fort Myers Beach, and to authorize the mayor to sign any and all needed documents to implement needed action. We'll start with you, Andy, first.
Okay, thank you. First of all, we've got no official notice from FEMA about anything. It's just because of a conversation we had last Thursday between, I believe it's February 13th, 2023 to now. We've had multiple communications with them.
Can you hand that to me? Because
The timeline?
yeah, because I think I want to read it into record so that, I mean, everybody else has done it. We might as well do it. But
Please.
go ahead.
But the mayor will allude to that. I mean, we have communicated with them. People, what's the town done? What's the town done? Well, we've done a lot. I mean, we've got multiple properties. I provided the mayor a little information a little while ago. I think it's part of here this document. If you don't mind, I'll be happy to talk about this. Of the 105 properties, that they identified with us. 5 address, there's no such address.
Andy, could you set the 105 number up a little bit more? Give us a little bit more.
That was the audit from FEMA.
Okay.
They wanted us to see if the 50-50 rule, if they've been conforming, pulled all their permits, did everything they were supposed to do to build back, to put their property back the way it was.
And this audit was completed when?
I don't know if they.
How about we do the timeline first?
Okay, you can do that.
Then you can give
There
the
you go.
response to what everybody's talking
But
about.
basically what we're asking is, there's a lot of things that are moving very quickly right now because we're on a schedule and we don't have time to have a meeting every week and every
Right.
day. So we needed authorization just to forge ahead in the best interest of the town.
So on Monday, February 13th, an email request from the state for a meeting with official state and FEMA topics to discuss the placement of shipping containers in special flood hazard area, substantial damage determinations and permitting of repairs, market value, property appraisal values, property appraisals, unpermitted work violations and code enforcement, town's floodplain management ordinance, and the flood building code regulations. On Tuesday, February 14th, we received a letter
Do you
from...
have a year with those?
2023, sorry. This is February 2023. Then Tuesday, February 14th, 2023, we received a letter from FEMA, Jackie Bell, questioning LIPA value determination and encouraging Fort Myers Beach to use methods other than LIPA when making substantial determinations. Friday, February 17th, 2023, we had a 1:30 meeting that took place. On Friday, February 17th, 2023, letter from FEMA, Jackie Bell, regarding market values used when making substantial damage determinations and notification of upcoming site visit. On Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, a meeting took place with FEMA and Charlie Baker regarding substantial determination letters. Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, email from FEMA 9 Charles Baker providing notice of substantial damage. On Saturday, March 11th, 2023, substantial damage letters were mailed out per conversation and meeting on March 7th of 2023. On Wednesday, March 22nd of 2023, letter from FEMA, Jackie Bell, retracting statements made in the February 14th, 2023 letter. On Wednesday, April 5th, 2023, town reached out to FEMA regarding substantial determination letters for guidance. On Thursday, April 6th, 2023, FEMA provided guidance, also had a call with Jacqueline Henry. On Friday, April 7th, 2023, a follow-up email from Jacqueline Henry noting our progress introducing SDAP Substantial Damage Administration Plan Template. On Thursday, June 8th, 2023, a request for documentation from Jason Hunter. On Tuesday, June 13th, 2023, town responded with requested documentations for the June 8th, 2023 request. On Saturday, June 29th, 2024, Jacqueline Henry reached out requesting an in-person visit for an update and to invite the SDAP workshop in October to help us with our plan. On Thursday, September 14th, 2023, email from Jacqueline Henry stating SDAP training was canceled and to be rescheduled for 2024. On Thursday, September 21st, 2023, an email from Jacqueline Henry to set up a day to meet. On Wednesday, October 4th, 2023, a meeting with Jacqueline Henry took place, requested SD list to be emailed. On Wednesday, October 4th, 2023, town emailed substantial determination list to Jacqueline Henry. Wednesday, December 6th, 2023, letter from FEMA, Jackie Bell requesting information. On Friday, January 12th, 2024, town submitted documentation to FEMA. Tamara Hansen, James Massolino, and Jason Hunter with communication from Tammy Hansen stating that they have received the documents yet, that they haven't received the documents yet as they were in an issue with access. On Wednesday, January 17th, 2024, all issues with access to the documents were sorted out and FEMA gained access to submitted documents. On Thursday, February 29th, 2024, email from Jacqueline Henry requesting substantial determination list updates. Town responded asking if they needed permit list as well. Thursday, February 29th, 2024, requested documentation was sent with a note stating that I am finally able to get through our list and update determinations. Friday, March 1st, 2024, permit list was sent to Jacqueline Henry and Christina Mirasan Trott, apologize if I butchered that name, and a response email was to by Christina Mirasan Trott requesting the following. We are only looking for the following information. Number of permits issued for standard determination properties impacted by Hurricane Ian located within the floodplain. 0 property must be located in SFHA, zones A, AE, V, VE, etc. Property is 50% or more damage, including appeals, progress in the rebuilding, permits issued, inspections, appeals, violations, etc., and property compliance, final CO issued, elevated, demolished, etc. On same day, town responded that this is what we are in the process of completing, and it will take a couple of weeks. Wednesday, March 13th, 2024, invitation sent to attend SDAP workshop from Christina Trott. Tuesday, March 19th, 2024, town received registration confirmation for the SDAP workshop. Wednesday, March 27th, 2024, Crystal Polk Buchanan emailed request to schedule meeting, update on town of Fort Myers Beach, NFIP CRS rating. Wednesday, Thursday, March 28th, call took place to retrograde us out of the CRS. So that is the timeline that we've had since 2023. Now,
So to add to that, we were given a list of 105 properties that were password protected, which means we couldn't provide that document to anybody. It was a federal document. We could not touch it. Only one person had access, and that was the floodplain manager. So of the 105 properties,
When were we notified of that, Andy?
I'm telling you,
Oh, I'm sorry.
from the 105 properties from the letter dated 12/6/23, here's the breakdown. 5 address, no such address. And we'll provide all this through the clerk. 2 addresses not in our jurisdiction. 4 addresses, structures were compliant based on the elevation certificate review. 5 addresses, potential substantial damage will need enforcement. 28 addresses, code enforcement is required, cases were opened. 5 addresses did not find any evidence of work completed. 51 addresses found to be compliant and not substantially damaged or improved. All this to say that we've been pretty much on top of everything, and we're really at a loss as to why this happened. There's been some questions. I'm going to hold it up because I don't have it. It's just a picture that I was sent of this document that came from, it's a National Flood Insurance Program Community Rating System Overview. This is a document that's very old. It's probably at least a year old. We never received a copy of this at all. So there's some miscommunication of some sort in certain areas. I'm sure that there's something that we need to be, to improve on. But I think from what I've been told and the part that I played since, in the last 11 months, and I know Dan's got some more information that hopefully he'll share about the first letters that started coming out. But we've been in communication with FEMA, with everybody we felt like we needed to be in communication with, taking the training they required, responding. We have a list, and I was going through it yesterday, and if you look at it, you see address ABC Estero Boulevard. Here's a picture of it. Here's the damage. Here's the building permit. Here's if there was a code enforcement. Here's this. All that documentation is submitted to them. So we are really we're just looking at each other like, what's going on? I hate to say it that way, but it seems like, we're not informed with that. We got a call. It's just a phone call at this point. There's never been an official notice. But we're working with the county. The county's been very proactive. They pulled the 5 affected municipalities together: Lee County, Bonita Springs, Cape Coral, Estero, and Fort Myers Beach. We've been on phone calls. I talked to the county manager last night. Dave and I had a conversation last night. We continue to evolve. Another tool in the arsenal is a filing suit. That is something that the county had discussed, and I've mentioned each of you. So that's part of why we got to where we are today, just in case there's things we need to do. Obviously, we'll stay in constant communication individually. Anything we need to talk about in public, we will call special meetings and have that. So I don't know if you want to share any more about prior to.
Yeah, for those that may or may not know, back in February of last year, we have always been told through the entire process that as long as you're doing and following the procedures you had in place before the storm, you will be compliant with what FEMA regulations are. That's what we've been told since day one. We were doing that. We were following that along. And then in February, we received a letter saying we are no longer going to allow you, or we strongly suggest you no longer use the LEPA letter of the determination of the value of your home, of your property. Of course, we all remember the shockwaves that sent out and the communication that happened. Well, what had ended up coming out of that was they just didn't understand Florida law. That's the easiest way to put it. And it got taken care of. Everybody was going about their business. What you have heard in the timeline and through what the manager has said is we took their guidance very seriously. In working with the state and working with the county, we took their guidance very seriously. We understand, we all remember the complaints we were getting about being so strict and being so code enforcement, and it was done specifically for this reason, so that we stayed compliant. And what you've heard is that we've done exactly what they've asked us to do. We've been in communication with them. Anything they've asked for, we've given them. If they've made a meeting, we've made the meeting. We've done everything that was asked of us. And our view is that what they did to us on Thursday and then subsequently, is no different than what the county has talked about, or Bonita, or anyone else. We were taken back. We have done everything asked of us. We've worked very hard to get that rating, and to take it away without communication, without warning, without this property is not in compliance, or we feel this. There was never any information given to us, and I think that's where we're at now. We're just trying to get information as to, if we did something wrong, please tell us. We will correct it. But we haven't received that information. As far as I'm aware, we have not received that information. And to me, I was I was up all night trying to think of how I could come up with an easy comparison. And maybe it's not a very good comparison, but I was talking to Andy about it before the meeting. Imagine you work your entire life to get a perfect credit score, and you maybe forgot to make one payment after 55 or 60 years, and it was one day late. The credit card company or the credit bureau is saying, we are now going to take 25% of your credit away because you've been perfect for so long that now we're just going to penalize you and not listen to anything you have to say. So all we're requesting is a meeting, something to meet with them to say, what of this list of these 105 properties that the town manager has written into play, read into the record, which one of these was the reason for you to say we no longer should be getting the 25% discount for our residents? What have we done over the last 2 years, almost 2 years, 18 months, that has made you make this decision on a Friday before Easter without any communication with us? I feel it's wrong. I feel our residents are paying the price for something that was not their fault. I think our staff has gone above and beyond to communicate with FEMA and their representatives to give them everything that they want. And it's my personal belief that I concur with what was said at the Lee County Board of County Commission meetings from their attorney, who very eloquently said, this is not America. This is not how the process goes. There's always an appeal process. Someone always has the right to defend themselves. And we were stripped of that right by this decision. And all we're asking is to have a seat at the table. Tell us what it is you feel we didn't do. We will take care of it if we haven't already. From what I see and what you read into record, Andy, we've done everything asked of us.
Right.
So please explain to us where we went wrong. Please explain to Lee County where they went wrong. Please explain to Benita at Cape Coral.
Correct.
Nobody understands. And when nobody within a county understands why this went this way or how it got to, it's not just one municipality. It's not just one, it's everybody trying to figure this out. So I will make a motion to give whatever tools are needed to our staff to be able to fight this on behalf of our residents, to make sure that this gets reviewed, reversed, and give our residents back what they've earned. Is that a motion? Is that a good enough motion?
The recommendation, I think, if you could,
I was
if
just going
that is
to, I was
consistent.
going to
Right before you do that, if I could, Frank even reached out the next day, and we just wanted more clarification. We wanted to fight our battle, and we reached out to FEMA rep in Atlanta. There was an FDM rep on the phone. We talked to them. Frankie, we pleaded the case. We stated the facts. We were told it's a final decision. We don't have to answer your questions. That's not cool. They owe us answers.
Well, and again, we're very thankful for all the help we've received from FEMA. But this is something that we're being punished for something we're not sure what we're being punished for, and it's just not right. I think to your point, we're owed an explanation, and maybe they don't feel they have to give it to us, but you and Nancy and Becky, do whatever you need to do, in my opinion. And I've said enough. I'll listen to my fellow council members for a while. I know it kind of got long-winded there.
I think you need a second, and I'm going to give a clarifying second, authorizing the mayor, the town manager, and our town attorney to take whatever actions necessary outside the scope of traditional meetings, in consultation with the rest of the council, to take whatever action is necessary to reverse this decision. That's your second.
Okay. Further discussion. Councilor Woodson?
Aye. I mean, I have no discussion. We got to do whatever we need to do. I mean, and it's the process has been usurped, I think.
Councilor Safford?
Yeah, I agree. We have to do everything and anything we can to protect our citizens. It's going to cost us a lot of money. And for FDM to say, I don't owe you an answer is absurd, in my honest opinion.
Councilor King?
I've got a lot of thoughts have been running through my mind the last few days. I mean, I'd like to know, and I don't know that it's answerable here, is what did Sanibel and Fort Myers do that we didn't do? Does anybody even know that?
Nope.
Also, it's very sad when you working with a entity that should be more collaborative than what it is. Obviously, they have a bigger staff than we do. If they've seen something that we haven't seen, the impetus should be on them to bring it to us to say, hey, we found this, let's get this corrected. And I'm not hearing that was done, and that's a shame.
And I've been in communication with a couple of those towns, and they're looking at me like, when you find out what you did wrong, let us know so we can understand if we either did it or we did something right. And I'm like, yes. I mean, they are even communicating with me about, hey, what did we do right? I mean, that's the same thing. And so, and I know that the information, and to your point, we've given them so much information. I mean, they couldn't even send us a letter that said, this is what happened, a phone call that didn't not even know. And Frankie I had to pull him back. We were on the phone, but it's like, I'll have to answer your questions.
Yeah, what's even scarier is we're entering hurricane season now, and this happens to us.
Right.
We got to get everybody on board with this.
The one clarification, Councilman, is the FEMA did say that they would not take any action until October 1st. So they're giving effective October 1st. But the right to due process has been denied.
And again, to retrograde you from decades of work to zero. What's the explanation? And there, just one last point. There's a lot of misinformation that's floating out there in the social media world. Our staff, along with the Corps of Army Engineers, just like every other municipality in Lee County, worked with the Army Corps of Engineers to do the substantial damage determinations. So it's not that we did anything different than any other municipality, whether it be Sanibel, Fort Myers, Cape Coral. We all followed the exact same process. So that's why it's even more baffling why some are being downgraded and some aren't. And again, no explanation. So hopefully we can get a response from DC down to help us get some answers, so that we can get the information to our residents as soon as possible. We've got a motion. We've got a second. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Next is final public comment. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in final public comment? Seeing none, accept the motion. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Got a motion by Counselor King. I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 12:16.